Welcome back to the Four Gardens podcast. I'm Jake Ifshin. The Four Gardens is an approach to cultivate a life of balance, joy, and abundance through tending four key areas. On this show, I talk to guests working in those areas and inspiring me of health, nature connection, creativity, and service. Today on the podcast, I'm joined by Sonia Zilberman. She's a relationships coach and somatic therapy practitioner. We have a wonderful conversation today that stretches into our own personal histories, into the different modalities that Sonia brings into her work, and definitely gets into a place of inspiration and vulnerability that I know you're going to like. Please enjoy this episode and make sure to check it out on YouTube. If you're listening to this on audio, we are recording this on video. We'd love to hear your comments, your reactions. Definitely like and subscribe, always support this. Let's jump right in. Sonia, thanks so much for coming out today to the Four Gardens studio and recording with me.
Thank you so much for having me, Jake. I'm so honored to be here. It's such a gift.
I love getting to do these in person. And I know you through dancing originally, through ecstatic dance back in the day.
Back in the day, pre-COVID days.
Pre-COVID, we were dancing and got to know you a little bit that way. But recently I've reconnected with you, started to learn about your work, and fascinated by it. I'd love if you could share more about what you're doing in the world, how you're directing your energy right now.
Yeah. Thank you, Jake. And I just really want to thank you for this opportunity. It's such an amazing gift to be here and to talk about my work and also what drives me and why I do it. And I think this place of why we do things and how we kind of share ourselves and present ourselves in the world is the essence of this Four Gardens podcast,
Great.
Which for me just really hits home. So really, thank you.
So it's a pleasure to have you here.
Yeah. So I'm a somatic therapy practitioner and relationships coach. And I work mostly one-on-one with people, also sometimes with groups, but one-on-one, helping people break through some of the blocks and old patterning that we tend to have regarding relationships. Like, why do we get into the same types of relationships again and again? Why does the same thing happen? Why do we attract the same type of person? And these like stories that we have that come up in our lives on repeat that we don't know how to break through, and we're almost victim to these places. Like, we want to feel loved, we want to feel seen and connected and empowered and sovereign while we're connected to others. And sometimes we just don't have the consciousness, the awareness to actually take that journey and to create that life on purpose.
Amazing and so important right now, so relevant to my life and so many others' lives. One thing you mentioned to me is how big a challenge relationships are across the board for humans. It's one of the hardest things we do.
If not the hardest.
If not the hardest things we do. So what are some of the insights that the modalities you bring, just generally to give people a sense of what you're bringing to help people to get through those blockages, those barriers? Share a little more on that, please.
Sure. Well, before I kind of get into the nitty-gritty, I want to say that the overarching, I'm a very spiritual person. I have deep spiritual practices of my own, and I bring that into the container with my clients. And there's this, we're animal and we're spirit, right? We've got these roots and we've got the branches to the sky, like the trees. And of course, there's this biological purpose of relationships to reproduce, all of that, right? To continue carrying on our genes, this Darwinian purpose that we have on Earth. But also we have a spiritual purpose. We have the spiritual direction that we take as humans, this journey that we're on. And for me, relationships are a deeply, deeply spiritual path because they bring up all of our shit. They bring up all of our stuff, right? Like all of our wounds, all of our insecurities, all of the places where we feel unloved or unseen. The relationships bring that up. Yeah. And so we feel those places really strongly when we're in a relationship. Of course, if we're alone meditating in a mountain in the Himalayas, we can be all zen and stuff. And then we go and we come to our family, like Ram Dass said, the famous Ram Dass quote, if you think you're enlightened, go spend a week with your family. Yeah, like our relations bring up all of the stuff that needs to be healed. And so relationship as a spiritual path for me is a really sacred and really courageous undertaking because it requires us to take responsibility for ourselves, for our actions, for our feelings, importantly, to feel things we don't want to feel. And also, how do we show up with another or, a number of people? It doesn't matter for me what your relating style is. And preserve our sense of self too. So how do we do this dance of synergy with another and sovereignty with ourselves? And for me, this balance of like the connection, the unity in the individual, for me, that's very spiritual. It's really important as a relationship.
What a beautiful answer to that, and description of why. Why to invest in relationships when I see it as part of the spiritual path, as a key opportunity in life. I think that for me, and perhaps for others, that we think about relationships, there's so much conditioning, so much expectation, how it should look, what we should have in our lives at different times that I experience. That I think that it reminds me too that there's a deeper why of, it's not about there can be this achievement mindset around relationships. I want that family, that perfect partner, those kids. And I think for someone more spiritually minded like me, I love that answer, to think about what are really the opportunities for my evolution, my growth, and how I can be with another and be there for other people and learn and evolve. Becomes a much more different kind of motivation than these are the marks of a good life, of success.
Yeah, and how do I be there for myself also? Because this Disney story that we're all sold, the princess things, I'm going to meet my Prince Charming and he's going to fulfill all of my needs, and there's a person out there that's going to make me feel happy. What kind of a crazy idea is that? There's a person out there who's going to fulfill all of my needs, make me feel happy, and if I'm not happy, then it's their fault and they need to change. That for me is a very disempowered way of living. It's we're actually, I work on a lot of shamanism and I study and practice a lot in shamanism, and this place of giving away your power. In shamanism, we talk about how do we take our power back? How do we reclaim pieces of ourselves? And this place of how do I take responsibility for my life? How am I responsible for my own feelings, for my own happiness, for being seen and getting my needs met in relationship? This is the core, right? This place of sovereignty when we're in synergy with another. And so to get back to your question, which I veered off from, I'm sorry, about the modalities and the tools, I have several kind of lineages, I would say, and areas of expertise and training that I draw from. The main one is from the core energetics modality. It's the Core Energetics Institute it's a deep somatic program based out of New York. It's a 4-year study where we combine kind of Reiki and Freudian psychology model and build up on that with the body and spirit framework. So there's this component of our body, our emotions, our trauma, our memories, in a way, right? Live in the body. Our mind isn't just some conceptual thing that is there that is running the show. In DC, we live in DC. DC is a city of heads, of mental space. And we kind of use our bodies to move from conference room to conference room to conference room, to move the head, right? But actually our feelings, our place of aliveness, our energy flow is in the body, also in the head, but also in much more the entire body. So how do we stay present with what's actually happening? How do we use the body in a therapeutic framework to unlock some of these stuck energies? We talk about energy blocks, armoring, energetic splits. Sometimes I see people, I work with people with, for example, I'm just giving an example, with a major energetic split, a cutoff between the heart and the pelvis, between the sexual energy and the heart. How does that translate into relationships? Well, when we get close to somebody and open our hearts, our sexuality dies. And so people come and they're like, how can I not lose my libido in a very intimate relationship? So we work in a way of opening the heart and the pelvic energy together. How do we feel? The 4 primary emotions that I work primarily with the emotional body: anger, sadness, fear, joy. These 4 emotions. The reason that they're primary is because a baby can recognize them on the face of their caregiver, of their mother or father, since birth. And so the superhighways in our brains are built on anger, sadness, fear, joy. How do I relate to somebody based on these four emotions? That's how our kind of inner child is wired to relate. How do I get my needs met? You know, at Core Energetics, we really look at inner child, early childhood development. The majority of our relating patterns, if not all of our relating patterns, are locked and loaded in our brain via these superhighways by the age of 6, which is actually a time when we don't have much access to memory. We don't have much access to that memory. And it's really, in relation to our primary caregivers, our immediate family. And so looking at how the body is shaped, how the body carries this energy, these repeating patterns about how we engage in our relationship with anger, our relationship with sadness, our relationship with fear, and also joy, and how we can tolerate or not these places, can really give us a lot of information around why these patterns keep happening on rinse repeat and what we can do about them. If that makes any sense.
It does, yeah.
Okay.
It makes a lot of sense. Yeah, so I'm hearing the core energetics is really a key modality for you. I'm fascinated by it too, the different ways you described it. Is there another, I know you mentioned shamanism too.
Yeah.
That's another part of your work as well.
Absolutely. I work personally myself. I'm very much on a kind of a medicine journey. I work a lot with plant medicine, with animal medicine. I also facilitate ceremonies, and people can reach out directly if they're interested. I'm not going to spend too much time on the podcast with that. And also, in terms of the shamanic kind of world view, of course, there's a spiritual component, but what is our presence? How do we want to show up in the world? Yeah, it's where is our source of power? When we're relating to people, are we giving our power away to them so that they can love us? Let me give myself away. Let me people please so that maybe you'll be in a relationship with me. Let me not have any boundaries so that maybe you'll stay in a relationship with me. This is a way of giving away power. And how do we bring it back into ourselves? Right? Another modality that I work with is sacred sexuality. And of course, when I work one-on-one with clients, we don't really work in the in the touch, the sacred sexuality kind of way, but the modality is there. Looking at sexuality from a place of sacredness, of a place of energy flow. Where does it get blocked? A lot of people that I work with, talk about checking out during sexual intimacy. Yeah. And then not having access to pleasure. So when I talk about sacred sexuality as a modality, the way that I see it is kind of like a pyramid. So on the bottom, we have safety. How do we feel safe? Right? Where do we not feel safe? What do we need to feel safe? In sexuality, but also in relationship in general, because sexuality is like this lens through sexual. How we do sex is how we do the rest of relating. So with sacred sexuality, the way that I see it from my own personal experience, is that it's like a pyramid. And at the bottom rung, the foundation, is safety. And this applies to sexuality, this applies to relationship, this applies to any relating the job, but specifically of sexuality because it's so intimate and vulnerable. So where do we feel safe or not? What kind of boundaries do we need? What kind of communication? What kind of intimacy do we need to feel safe? And what I mean by safe is staying present in the here and now. Not checking out about my grocery list or the other lover that I had or why this lover isn't perfect or am I going to climax too soon? Whatever is the story. Staying present with the feelings, with the sensations. the safety that we need there. Once we can achieve a place of safety and we can stay present, we can access pleasure. The reason people have a hard time accessing pleasure is because they don't feel safe. They check out. They go into some sort of a story. And it's in there that the work begins. So when we're feeling pleasure, what is pleasure? Pleasure is energy in motion. It's a free flow state of energy. We're relaxed, we're open, energy is flowing, and we're feeling pleasure. This is sexual energy, this is any other energy. When the energy is flowing freely and it's not blocked, we're in a state of pleasure, right? When we access pleasure in sexuality, we can take it to the final tier of the pyramid and manifest with it. So sex magic, I don't know if you've kind of heard of it. It's a way of manifesting our lives on purpose using sexual energy. But for that to happen, we need to feel safe. And for that to happen, we need to, and on top of that, we need to feel pleasure. So my work with clients is primarily on the safety realm because so many of us are lacking that aspect of relating and then also moving into the pleasure.
So it's powerful work and relevant to me right now. Yeah. I'll just be transparent too. I have a clarity call scheduled with you tomorrow, I think. And these are challenges I work with too. And they're very, just to make this safe for others too and start to take the stigma away. It's important to me that on this podcast, we talk about sexuality and what role that plays in our lives and relationships. And I think that, for me, that I've experienced what you're talking about too, being in my head, separation from the heart and the pelvis, getting out of the flow. So these are things that I've been working on for years, and it's an ongoing journey for me. It's a long process for me. And I'm excited to get I've already been really moved by your videos and work on this topic too. So hopefully other people out there will see this and find the support or find the modalities for them that will help them connect to their sexual power, retake that and their pleasure. So I think that's really important.
Thank you. Of course, we're like an onion. We don't stop. Consciousness is infinite. There's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to get to. We just keep expanding. Energy is infinite. Consciousness is infinite. Our ability to feel pleasure is infinite. To manifest is infinite. It's a never-ending journey, and I'm certainly on it myself. When I am, thank you so much for your vulnerability and putting yourself out there on this couch, on this podcast. And it also gives me the strength and the courage to do the same. So thank you for taking that leadership step. And I really feel that, and it's definitely an ongoing journey for me. When I make love with my partner, we really make sure to create an energetic bubble so that we feel safer. It's one of the modalities, tantric modalities. And then probably every time we make love, one of us or probably both of us is like, I'm scared. We say it, I'm scared, I'm scared, I'm scared. And we take a minute, we breathe, we make eye contact, we feel the fear that is coming up around this deep place of intimacy, in relationship. And being so open and so vulnerable and so in that heightened state with somebody, it's really, really scary quite a lot to not check out. And so just saying even, I'm scared, and naming it and being present with that and being witnessed in that is a really important tool that I use to ground, in sexuality. So we don't check out.
That level of authenticity is very inspiring to me. A teacher I worked with a little bit was sharing that authenticity and intimacy are directly related. The more authenticity you have to be authentic, that you're feeling fear. I feel the energy of that. You say that, just to create the safety to say, I'm scared right now.
Yeah.
In sexuality and lovemaking, to say that is powerful. And to another podcast guest, Tristan Montoya, said, our secrets are making us sick. I really like that line. He quoted somebody else, but to be keeping in, surrender is the word coming up for me too. To be not being able to surrender and to keep part of myself private or away from the other is the deepest work to me. Is to create that with somebody else. It's so challenging for me to be able to be fully in my truth and in my body and in my heart all at the same time.
Yeah.
It's a huge project.
Yeah. It's the project.
It's the project, yeah.
The project. How do we stay present with what is? Yeah.
How do we stay present with what is?
Inside of us.
Wow, a lot to say here, and I would like to take the conversation a little more vulnerable to personalize it too, and kind of hear some of your story too around this, too, where you're coming from with both your, we talked about your past relationship and some of your work too has evolved quite a bit over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started this journey for myself. I think like most people who show up in a place of facilitation or working with people, first we walk the path ourselves. If we don't walk the path ourselves, how can we ever be of support or a service to another person, right? And so for me, this journey started when I found myself, I was married, I have 2 beautiful kids, and I found myself repeating the same relating dynamics with my then husband, that I had as a child growing up. Really destructive, really unhealthy, really painful places. To the point, Jake, where I could no longer differentiate in my body whether I was feeling trauma around my marriage or trauma around my childhood. I didn't know whom I was feeling those feelings in relation to. That's how I knew I needed to figure this one out. Is it my husband? Is it my father? Who is it? What am I Why am I feeling so small? And those patterns, there's no one to blame. It's a co-creation. All relationship dynamics are co-creations. And if one person changes, the dynamic shifts. Absolutely. So I found myself, I'm a Vipassana meditator. I'm a Vipassana meditator for probably close to 20 years right now. But I didn't have a home practice. I was going every year to these retreats. I didn't sit at home. So I started sitting at home for an hour every day. And that really brought me into me and realizing how unhappy I was. It made me more aware of my unhappiness. The numbness thawed out a little bit. So many of us are so numb. As one of my mentors says, 90% of the people, 90% of the time, are 90% unconscious of what's happening. So once we start becoming more conscious of what's inside of us, we start realizing, I need to do some work around this place. So I did. I crawled into a somatic practitioner's office and said, I need help. I don't know what to do. And we worked for a number of years, with work that resulted eventually in the dissolution of my marriage. And the work continued. I started working with plant medicines quite a lot as well. And then I met my current partner who's also on this journey and who's able to also do the work with me. And so we've been doing the work in relationship for all of this time, for a number of years. Once I started doing the core energetics modality, I realized how potent and powerful it was. And how deep being in your body and feeling these emotions. I work with people. I sometimes ask somebody, hit the pillow. I have a thing, people hit it, to move some energy. Hit the pillow. And then it's like, how young do you feel? I feel so young. Some memory comes up of childhood that was completely repressed, all because we're moving this energy. So it's so powerful. And so then I signed up for the core energetics practitioner training. It's a 4-year program. Very powerful, very transformative work. And as I have been doing that as a coach, as a relationships coach, and also have been on a sacred sexuality journey with my partner through the work of the International School for the Temple Arts, ISTA, and many other tantric, courses and retreats and such, and have also been doing the medicine work with teachers, with deep teachers as well. Yeah. So it's been a really, really transformative, half a decade, I don't know. But I remember this pivotal point where I was like, do I jump off or not? Do I leave a relationship where I'm not at where my knees are, where I'm just repeating the old stuff, and take a leap of faith into the new? Just so scary. I remember crawling into my therapist's office and I said, Elizabeth, I don't have any good options. This is bad and this is worse, you know? And she's like, yeah. Doesn't sound like it, but it doesn't mean that there won't be a future. Right now it's hard. And I just remember the pain being so visceral in these dark places that it, like, I had to feel it on my body. I couldn't, like, smoke a joint and make it go away. I couldn't go, you know, with a friend to a thing and forget it. I had to really feel it. So these really hard places in my life, they forced me to really feel it. You know, I was working also a job. I forgot to mention, I don't know if we have a couple of minutes too.
Yeah, I actually would like to hear. Thank you for sharing the internal transformation. It's not surprising that your work, your external work, of what you do every day, the work you go into, the job you do, would also transform as you're going through this internal revolution, this internal waking up. And you said this piece around awareness. And I think that's one thing of the story that I'm noticing is how your awareness grew and grew and grew through this self-awareness. Self-understanding was part of your healing. So I'm not surprised that would change your awareness around the work you were doing too. So please share a little bit about that work transformation.
So for me, the journey, you know, with the capital V, is from a place of victimhood to a place of sovereignty. The place of, again, not victim, because, you know, there's situations in life where we can be victim to things. Absolutely. But the mindset, the experience of victimhood, it's like things are happening to me. The person is doing this to me. They're making me feel this way. This place of smallness, of life is happening to me. Yeah. Not very empowered. And so the journey is, how do we get from this place to, I am manifesting my life on purpose. I am a creature, a being of love and freedom. And no one can take that away. No. So I was working, you know, a job. I'm very passionate about the environment, about justice. I came to DC to study at George Washington University environmental justice and human rights and sustainable development. That's been like a real passion of mine. How do we show up in a place of justice in the world? I worked in the human rights sector and environmental justice for probably close to 20 years. And at the end, I left that modality because I became very disconnected. I became disconnected for a couple of reasons. One, in this line of work, this advocacy work that I was doing, I was, you know, flying all over the world. I was at the UN in Brussels, in DC, in New York, fighting for this, fighting for that, fighting against this dictator, fighting for this person to get out of jail, fighting. I was so good at fighting, Jake. I was the best fighter ever. I loved fighting. I loved, like, putting on the suit and walking into the room and advocating for something, fighting for something. You know? I was very passionate about it. But as I started undertaking my own journey, my own personal transformation, I really became aware of I was fighting the bad guy. I needed a bad guy to fight for. And how much of, like, a small place that was. And how much for me, and this is getting a little vulnerable, how much of a place for me that was around my family of origin. This fighting an oppressor, fighting a person, you know, at the end of the day, fighting my dad. I fought my dad so much. My dad and I fought like cats and dogs when I was young, you know, and fighting to be seen, fighting to prove a point, fighting to get my needs met. Of course, a bottomless bucket that can't be filled if that person is responsible for my needs, right? And so as this personal work was ongoing inside of myself, I realized, like, I'm done fighting. I don't want to fight the bad guy. I don't want to be the small underdog victim, you know. of course, it's the work that we were doing and that my colleagues are still doing is so important. It's so important to get people out of jail, to get aid, to fight for laws. I'm not poo-pooing the work in any way. But for me, because of my personal story, it was a place where I was fighting from a victim place. And so when COVID hit, and I was upstairs in my house trying to do this work, and downstairs I had my kids who were probably in a trauma state around early COVID and not knowing what's going on and not knowing if they'll ever see their friends. I was like, I'm done. This is in no way resonant with who I am at all at this point. I'm done. And at that point, I was already in the core energetics training. And so I left. I took a leap of faith. And these leaps of faith, they're really scary. But the more we do them, the more we learn to jump, the more this inner knowledge comes up of the universe will hold us. This trust in ourselves, in our hearts. And I took a leap of faith, and I started doing the relationships coaching, and I've been putting all of my heart to it. And it's such a gift, because as we are in this podcast together, being fully present together, I get to do this with people for my job. I get to be fully present for 60 minutes at a time with people, and support them and be of service. Not in a mind story, not in a place of, that person does this. Fully present with another human being. Like, what a gift. What an absolute gift.
Thank you so much for sharing this journey you've been on, both in your work and your intimate relations, and noticing how both were recreating childhood patterns.
Yeah.
You recognize that in your past marriage and in your work too now with fighting your father pattern coming up. So it's beautiful to hear how you've shifted that and are continuing to work with that and heal that, I imagine, as you move forward. And wanting to think, moving into this next chapter, moving out of that human rights work and advocacy, what is it now that you're passionate about creating, the change in the world that you want to see come about?
A beautiful question. And I just also want to just really ground myself and tap into it and make sure that it comes from my heart and not just, something I say. And, as I'm moving on my journey and I am growing in my sovereignty, in my ability to live my life out of pleasure, to live my life and feel alive more and more and more. The more I do this work, the more I feel alive. Yeah, I'm stuck in traffic after I drop off my kids from school. Normally, like going down 16th at rush hour, now I look at the birds, and the birds are flying, and the tree's so perfect, and I'm like feeling so much gratitude for this life. And so, from this place, and of course, not always, of course I have my places of smallness. Of course I have my places of reactivity. Of course I have my places where I don't feel loved or seen, where I feel small. But more and more, those places are more not where I stay, and more I learn how to move out of those places. So in terms of my vision of what I want to create, number one, everything that's on the outside is the mirror of the inside. So the more I create on the inside, the more it will reflect on the outside. This journey, the one thing that has taught me is that I can't save anybody. I can't save the world. I can't make the world a better place until I make myself a better place, a better vessel, a more open heart. So that's really where I'm putting my energy in this way. And it reflects on the outside, absolutely. I always get really, let's see, what I want to create. Right now in the present moment, working with people is the most life-affirming thing for me. Because what people bring to the table, the types of transformations that I witness people having, not because I do anything, because I'm facilitating this, because I'm holding the space, because of the skills that I bring, the invitations that I give people. People are just doing incredible work. Amazing. I'm so proud of my clients. like so proud and so humbled, at where people can go. And I really want to see how I can creatively, also with immense gratitude for this podcast, bring that out of my office into the world. Because I know how it feels to feel small, to not feel loved, to not feel seen, to feel disempowered at life, to feel stuck. And I really want to support people, be of service to people, to break through those places. Because our power as humans is limitless. We're beings of love and light underneath all that stuff. And with all that stuff, with also all that stuff is real. And to together in community, grow and open up and continue to opening up. And in that way, anchor the light in this planet. Anchor the love. Create the type of communities. Create the types of relationships that we want to see in the future generations. The seeds that we're planting now, they're going to bear fruit in 7 generations. The work that we do now, it's going to reflect on our children, our children's children, our children's children's children. How the seeds that we plant now will bear the fruit later. So let's focus on planting those seeds within ourselves. And a teacher of mine, many teachers, but Alonso Del Rio and Miguel really talk about being in good relation with everyone and everything. How do we stay in good relation with everyone and everything in this world? How do we move through the world, right? And this is the path for me. This is the journey. And if I can be of service to others on that journey, that will really be a life worth living. And this is why I invest so much in my own training, in my own personal growth. Every year I do many trainings to be of more and more service in this way, for myself and for others.
So inspired by this description of your passions and the change you want to create. I'm signed up for this. I'm on this train too with you. I'm just resonating with a lot of what you're saying. And one word coming up for me is curiosity, is how your definition of love has evolved in this journey you're on. How do you think about that word now?
I love it. Let's see. Back in the day, more than anything, I wanted to be loved. I really, really wanted to feel loved. And you know what? I still do. I really want to feel loved. And sometimes when I don't feel loved, I come up to my partner and say, Ellen, I don't feel loved. I don't feel loved. And he's like, okay, what do you need? Give me a hug. I'm asking for my needs in this way. But love is not a feeling. Love is not a need. Love is an experience. For me, I don't know how it is for another. Love is a way of living with an open heart. I was at a retreat actually last weekend, and somebody in this retreat, we had some words at the end, and somebody who's been with that group for a long time said, we are actually in love with each other, like physically in love with each other. Like we're living in love with each other. And for what that really means, like, how do we ground that in the world, like real stuff, is seeing each other for who we are with all of our defects. I have so many defects. I have so many triggers. I get triggered like crazy. I have all this stuff, all this programming that I'm still trying to unravel. And this is who I am. And to be seen in that and to be accepted, for me, is the definition. and to see the other with all of their stuff and not want to change them so that I can feel better. Of course, a journey, like, are we there? Like, can we get there in like a nice little package? No, we can't. It's a journey. All the time we will get triggered and we will have stuff come up to our face and we will have our triggers come up. But learning how to be in the present moment with what is without judging it, without blame, shame, or guilt for the other or me. Yeah. And just seeing what comes up. It's like a journey. Like, what is relationships? It's all of our shit coming up. Am I allowed to say the word shit in this podcast?
Go for it.
All right. It's all of our shit coming up, person A, person B, person C, I don't care. Coming up, all of our shit comes up. We're triggering each other. We go back to wounded places. We're all like little boys and girls who want to be loved by our mommies and daddies and not feel seen or loved by the other person because that's how they felt when they were little. So, and we all have this place. No parent can be this perfect parent that can meet their, kids 100%. Doesn't exist. And trust me, I'm a parent. And so how do we break through this like ping pong game of you're bad, you're bad, you're bad, you're bad, you're bad, you're bad. Change, 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 change. And actually take responsibility for our feelings, and say, I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling sad. This experience has brought me back into a place when I was young and I felt sad too. I'm going to take responsibility for it. And when we actually take that responsibility, then we're not blaming the other person, and the other person, suddenly the space opens up to have compassion and empathy. Because they're not defensive against your bad. So if anything, I work with my clients, on the bread and butter kind of like what we do. We take the I'm bad, you're bad out of the equation of relating. There's nobody bad. Nobody needs to change.
Nobody needs to change, but there is awareness to grow, compassion.
Exactly.
There's evolution, but it's a different kind of change, right? So you think about shit, use that word.
Yeah.
In the garden, shit is full of nutrients. Shit gets composted.
I love that.
Right? We don't just, we're cautious. We treat it with care because shit can make you sick. But shit, when you are mindful with it, when you process it in the compost systems or in waste treatment in productive ways, we can reclaim the nutrients and put those on our fruit trees.
That's amazing.
And harvest. And I think about that transformation that's happening in nature all the time. And I think about it around the shit that you're talking about that we're carrying with us.
Yeah.
That drags us down, that feels heavy. A relationship that causes us to blame, to feel guilt, to feel all these things that keep us from our higher self or a higher expression. I think about that as being, it is in a way the material that we're working with to evolve without throwing it away. Or when I hear you say change it, that here spiritual bypass comes up for me too. That's my thinking around that. Yeah.
Ashe, brother, like that metaphor of shit really, really resonates with me, like really deeply, because, in the core energetics model, we have the higher self, and then we have a trauma state that happens. I can send you a diagram.
And we can share that with this podcast.
Yeah,
sure.
And then there's the lower self, where all of these kind of negative feelings live. And then there's the mask, where the majority of people actually live from. It's more of a numbed state, the mask, this repeated pattern, right? And a lot of our, when people talk about shadow work, the mask is always the distortion of the higher self qualities. So we come into this world with gifts. Each one of us brings unique gifts. We're all so unique. So many gifts in this world. Amazing, right? But because of the trauma of not being met, of not having had our needs met in certain ways at certain times, in early childhood, we develop this mask that we learn to live from to get our needs pseudo-met, but not really. That's why the rinse repeat all the time. And the mask is the distortion of these gifts. And if we make our journey back into the core, we find that these places that tripped us up are actually the treasure chest of our gifts. And the key to unlocking that treasure chest is awareness and consciousness. So consciousness for me is like a key to unlocking the gifts. that are hidden in the shadows, in the shit.
Consciousness is the key to unlocking the gifts. Shit, I like that. So,
in the shit, yeah.
to say that, John.
Yeah. Because it's our wounding that gives us this, how do I say this? It's our wounding that gives us these modalities, these ways of being that can be really, really powerful gifts. You know, for somebody with, for example, a narcissistic character structure, right? Then I don't know how much you're familiar with the narcissistic character structure. It's a place where you want to be really seen. It's really a place of like not enough love and be recognized for what you do. So with the narcissistic character structure, the mask is kind of, there's this place of, I'm going to do amazing things and be great so that you can love me. There's a lot of destruction there, absolutely. But people with narcissistic character structures tend to be really powerful leaders once that wound is healed. You know? Really like good at generating things, at creating things. Because of this wound originally of needing to be validated. This place of validation is really big there. That's why it's so destructive and toxic in many ways. You know? Validate me, validate me, validate me. You, validate me. You know? But once we heal it, you can, you know, there's this gift of like creation and, you know, leadership and all that stuff.
Very intuitive that you brought up this pattern, though, because it's something my producer Ari and I have been talking about this week in particular, which is about how do we achieve we're both kind of driven guys, right? Doing lots of things, wanting to help, wanting to achieve, and we both recognize this pattern. I can really speak for myself and for Ari that we were living in a way so much our pattern was to feel like we needed to earn love in our life, that our achievements are the things, what we create, what we do is what it takes to get love. And to me, it's related to that, some of that.
Absolutely.
And some of our power, too,
is
there, but also some of our pain, at least some of my pain, I'll speak for myself, is there because if I don't feel like I'm doing a good job or doing well, I'm not embodying love. I'm not giving myself, meeting my own needs with embodying love in ways that aren't externally related to validation as much. So as a pattern that's come up for me lately to do that. So it's just kind of, I thought it was cool as a name that was on our minds, that here's something that we're sourcing from outside us instead of doing the inner work. It's a level of inner work to get to that, being a source of our own love, and finding that inside as well as from outside.
Yeah. And I'm also seeing that this wound has, you know, this place of, how do I get love? What do I do to get love? You know, when healed, it can create a beautiful podcast like this to share love. You know, not get love, but share love.
Not get love, but share love. I think you're really summing up a lot of the things you've said today have really connected to core intentions of the podcast. So thanks for naming that. This is about self-cultivation, what we're growing. So I just think I see you as a great collaborator on this journey of how do we grow our highest expression, our highest self, our most aliveness. I mean, there's so much we can say about this. And as we come to the close of this conversation, I want to pass it back to you one more time to bring it back to the earth, talk about how we get there and get to the states of being that we're describing.
Yeah. Yeah, like it's not easy. And do I live in this state of love? No, I do not. I am a human being and I have my feelings and I have my emotions and struggles. And how do we stay present with those places? You know, again, talking about spiritual bypassing, mask. There's a mask, which in core energetics we call the serenity mask. It's like, everything's fine. I'm spiritual. I'm not worried. I'll just manifest. Woo-woo. Like, no, this is not what I'm talking about. How do we stay present with uncomfortable feelings? When things go bad in our lives, when we don't get what we want, when we are feeling small, when we are not feeling loved, how do we stay present with anger, with sadness, with fear, with joy? How do we move those feelings, those emotions, not in another person, not repressing them, but actually feeling them and tolerating them? One of the mentors at Core Energetics, one of my teachers, said, Core Energetics is really about getting comfortable with really uncomfortable states. How do we tolerate these uncomfortable places and take responsibility for them? And a lot of times that involves like moving the body. For some people, even making eye contact is really, really difficult. So I might invite somebody to make eye contact for me if that is a place that's difficult for them for a while. And the most important thing I want to really make sure that we touch base upon here is grounding. Grounding is the single most important thing we do. I start every session with every client with a grounding attunement so that we're here in the here and now. Most of us live over here. Now we bring the energy down. How do we unlock the blocks, the splits to be able to bring our energy down into the ground so that we can feel? Grounding is really, really, really important in shamanism, in the plant medicine world, at Core Energetics, in sacred sexuality, because it is about being in our bodies. I'm in my body no matter where I go. I work with medicine, with plant medicine. I am in my body. I'm not in some woo-woo trip somewhere. I'm present with what is. Yeah. When I'm with my clients, I'm present. A lot of the work that I do with my clients to be of best service is I'm grounding myself constantly for 60 minutes. I'm grounding myself so that it can come through me, so that I can feel what the client is feeling, what my client is feeling, and so that I have that inner guidance of inviting a modality, creating a modality, collaborating on a modality. It's an infinite universe of what we can do, right? But to be able to really tap into what my clients need, I need to be grounded and I need to facilitate and support the grounding of my clients.
So important. People who want to connect more, learn more.
Absolutely.
From you, be a client potentially.
Yeah.
Or just benefit from your latest thoughts. I know you're releasing regular content and videos, including about, you had a really moving one about the conflict in Ukraine and how you're relating to that, and just beautiful stuff that you're making in content and videos. So in order to follow you or connect, what are the best ways? Thank
you so much for that offer, Jake. I have a Facebook group that we will post also with this video, called Journey into Love. And in that Facebook group, I post a lot of free video content as well as, infographics and other really, really amazing content. I hold free master classes in that Facebook group. So please, if you're interested in just learning more about how I work, this type of modality, if you're not ready to take the next step or you want to take the first step, that Facebook group would be the best place to start. I also have a Facebook account that you can follow also, an Instagram account. I will be diving into the world of TikTok. I have a YouTube channel as well. I'll give all of those to Jake to post. And it's just lots of really good video content to get you thinking about this stuff, to get you more aware about, this is my pattern in life. Like, I never realized that this person and that person, these relationships had the same thing in common. It's like, I do check out during sex, and some tools to help you not to. So this would be a really good place to start. Also, if you're really interested in taking the journey, really taking the journey with me one-on-one, I offer free clarity calls. So it'll be about 30, 45 minutes where we will, first I'd love to hear from you about what are your pain points, what are your challenges, what are the patterns in your relationships that you'd like to break through? What are your intentions and where you want to be? And if that is in alignment with how I work, because it's not always in alignment, then I'll tell you how we would work together to get you where you want to be. Absolutely. And
so much great stuff.
Yeah, it's really wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to support it and really grateful for this conversation today. Thank you for taking the time to share your story and share about your work.
Thank you so much. It's been really very heart-centered and very introspective. And thank you for creating the safe space to be vulnerable and to be authentic and grounded, and also sharing about yourself. It's I feel connected, and when people connect in this way, even if it is, in a podcast, I think it creates that place of that frequency of love that we want to see much more.
Amazing. Yes, I agree. Thank you for sharing your story as well. Feeling connected.
Thank you.